Welcome to the Art of Adventure podcast. I'm your host, Mac Teg. I'm an illustrator, and I created this podcast to get to know other artists who are creating fantasy and sci-fi artwork. Joining me today is Mac Teg. How are you doing today? I'm doing all right. All right, to start things off, how old are you, and when did you first become interested in the fantasy genre? I'm 34. I first became interested in the fantasy genre when I was a kid. Truth be told, I'm not really a huge fantasy fan, but a lot of movies in the 80s that I watched when I was young kind of made me interested, at least in the visuals. The movie Willow comes to mind. Also, I always liked Disney's The Sword and the Stone. It was a good one. The Black Cauldron, that sort of thing. So I guess I first became interested sometime in the early 90s. And what did you want to be when you grew up? Let's see. When I was very young, I wanted to work in construction, of all things. But I always had kind of a draw to make art. That was always kind of a calling, pretty much ever since I was a little kid. I always drew, cartoons and stuff. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, for instance, or Super Mario, Sonic, that sort of thing. I was always really into video games. I got a Super Nintendo when I was a child and, played Final Fantasy and The Legend of Zelda and, Chrono Trigger, of course, which kind of influenced a lot of my visual language, I suppose, and my interest in fantasy plus sci-fi, time travel, and swords and lasers and stuff like that. So yeah. Who encouraged your artistic endeavors? So when I was young, obviously my parents were supportive of the art that I made, but I don't think they really wanted me to pursue art as a career. They wanted something a little bit more traditional or stable. But, I always had teachers who would really encourage me and help me, grow as an artist. But now my partner is very supportive and actually encouraged me to quit my old job as a baker to pursue artwork or making art full time as a career. So, they're great. Is anyone else in your family artistic? Yes, my mother is she makes, I guess, fabric kind of sculptures, I guess you could call them. And she runs her own business, making these creations. And my father he was always into woodworking when I was a kid and that sort of thing. He takes a lot of pride in the kind of stuff he does around the house, like landscaping and building things and fixing things and remodeling and that sort of thing. He's been working on remodeling their house for 20 years probably. And I remember my grandpa drawing cartoons from the newspaper comics, like Alley-Oop and Garfield and Prince Valiant, that sort of thing. And I have some cousins who were artistic earlier on. I guess my uncle's pretty artistic too. But nobody else really, except I guess for my mom, is pursuing some type of creative type of job or career or anything like that. Who or what inspires you? Well, like I said previously, I've been heavily inspired by those sword and sorcery flicks from the 80s. and video games, old school video games. But I draw a lot of inspiration from comic books. I'm a big Jack Kirby fan and Mobius, and I'm really into uh, those old horror comic magazines like Creepy, Eerie, Vampirilla, that sort of thing. Heavy Metal magazine, and some mangaka like I really like Akira Toriyama's work from Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball. That's pretty much the big ones. Did you go to art school? Yes, I went to university for studio art with emphasis in graphic design, but I did not complete the program. But I did manage to work in the graphic and web design / web development sphere for. Been pretty much doing that since I was 18, which is like what, 16 years, something like that. I don't know, for a long time. But I, recently, I've always sold artwork and stuff in the past, but I've been doing the full-time freelance illustration since the pandemic started. Yeah, it's been pretty interesting. I also went to school for game design for a little while, so I learned a lot about making video games specifically. I used to actually make games a few years ago with some friends, but I don't know. We never really had any great success with these projects. They were more just like kind of just to have fun and learn some stuff, really. I'd love to make some more video games, though, or even tabletop RPG modules, or even whole game, or systems, I guess you'd say. Can you tell us a bit about the tools and techniques that you use? Let's see, I have a drawing monitor, the XP Pen 22R Pro, I think it's called. And it's great. I used to use the bamboo, the little bamboo tablet, but then I upgraded. And I like it a lot more. It's great to be able to see, like, to actually draw on a screen and see what you're drawing. I draw in Photoshop, but I might be switching to Clip Studio Paint because some other guests on the show have talked about how great it is compared to the Adobe suite. Let's see what else. Sometimes I'll draw on by hand on paper and stuff. Nothing too fancy there. I just use the cheapest mechanical pencils I can buy. Let's see, what is it? It is a Papermate Sharpwriter number 2 mechanical pencil. It's the yellow ones. You've probably seen them. You can get them in any grocery store or, Walgreens or whatever. And then I just use computer paper. Sometimes I use colored computer paper just because I have a lot of it from a different project. But I just draw on a clipboard or something. I prefer that to having an actual sketchbook. So I just collect all these drawings and put them in page protectors and then put them in a binder, just to keep track of them. But it makes things much easier when you don't have to lug books around or anything. I'll use Adobe Illustrator to vectorize my drawings. I used GIMP for a long time because it's free and it's easy to use. Especially when you, because I grew up with Photoshop. I've been using Photoshop since I was in high school. So let's see, that was in like 2003. So almost 20 years. Wow. Jeez. So yeah, when I was using GIMP, I had the Photoshop plugin, I guess, for it that somebody made to turn GIMP into Photoshop. So I just made it a little bit more user friendly for me, just because I had this knowledge of all the shortcuts and all that. Because I try to use the keyboard shortcuts to work more efficiently. And yeah, but I highly recommend GIMP for people who are wanting to break into the digital illustration or painting world. You can't beat something that's free and fairly robust. So, what am I working on now? Well, let's see. I've got lots of client work coming down the pike. Pike. Coming down the pipe. Pike? Hold on. Coming down the pike or pipe? Okay. Alright. It's pike. Coming down the pike. But I try to work on some just personal projects every now and then. So like I said, I'm working, or I'd like to be, I'm kind of in the beginning stages of working on a tabletop RPG game system that is like a team-based game as opposed to individuals against the GM. It would be a couple of teams against each other to try to complete a task. But the task obviously relies on whatever the adventure module that is being run is. So it's kind of inspired by. I'm a big Overwatch fan. I'm a Mercy main. So, but the whole teams of characters that have specific abilities is very interesting to me. So I kind of want to see if I can extrapolate that out to a tabletop kind of adventure game scenario. So patent pending, don't steal my idea. Let's see what else. I'm trying to get some like t-shirt designs and some more merch in my shop because all I have is some stickers and like you can commission character artwork, but that's about it. So I wanted to kind of show some more stuff that I can do. And I've always wanted to work on a comic. I've made comic strips in the past and stuff, but I've never really had one that I finished because I kind of struggle with writing interesting story hooks or just stories in general. So I'd love to collaborate with someone who has a great script or something and actually draw a whole comic that I can be proud of. Because I've read comics, since, I was a kid, and I've read books on sequential art and, the art of making comics that are good. Like, Will Eisner is obviously a master. And, Hodag and I spoke about the importance of the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, which is an amazing book. And it can really help take your artwork to the next level if you go through it and follow some of their tips and techniques, especially about like camera angles. That's a big one. And making scenes and characters look dynamic and eye-catching and striking and making you want to, read the comic or pick up the game or something. Oh yeah, I've also always wanted to make like a tarot deck. I think that would be really cool. It's obviously a lot of work. I believe it's 72 individual images. Maybe it's 78. I'm trying to think. Oh, I just finished working on a book for the Bugbear Brothers. It's called Project 666. It's like 6 new classes, 6 spells, and 6 relics to add some like, I guess, grimdark kind of flavor to your 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons campaign. This isn't really art related, but I DM. I'm a dungeon master professionally, so I work with some local libraries, or well, one library, running a weekly game for young people, and they told me today actually that there's another library that might want to have me come in and do the same thing for their library. So that's pretty exciting. But yeah, I don't know too much about that one yet. Who are some other artists that you think our listeners should know about? Well, let's see. I mean, obviously, any of the guests that have been on the show so far are definitely worth looking at. Who else? Rebecca Kirby. Her username is at Reweki, Reweki. Her drawings are really great. I know she's inspired by Tove Jansson, who did the Moomin comics. Sexual Yokai on Instagram is great. They kind of do cut paper artwork, but it looks kind of in the same vein as the stuff I make with all the real dark shadows. Julie Rose on Instagram makes some really great old school kind of graphics. Andrew McLean is great with his Headlopper comic. I'm a fan of Paul Pope, who did like Heavy Liquid. He's a comic book or comic illustrator. Beast Wreck does great line art. Florian Bertmer has some really fascinating artwork. They're a great inker. Jimmy Knives makes cool stuff. Rain Dimitri is a great illustrator on Instagram. Alban Fakat is a great sculptor on Instagram. They're French, I believe. They did a sculpture of Hellboy, and they released a sculpture of Lupin the Third recently that they just look fantastic. I wish I could afford to get one of their sculptures because chef's kiss, beautiful. Let's see who else. Andy Hongistator on Instagram. They're a really cool illustrator, and they do kind of like a interesting, like kind of, I always want to say like a manga inspired dungeon crawl artwork. They've got like a running comic on their Instagram that is pretty fun. My pal Monstrous Periwinkle makes some really cool kind of abstract ink drawings. My friend October, who goes by Femcell on Instagram, does some really cool drawings. But yeah, that's about all I can think of off the top of the old dome here. Where can people find you? Well, my website, macteg.com, is a good place. macteg.com/linktree has links to all my social media. I'm most active on Instagram and Twitter and Reddit and Discord too, I'd say. There's a few of the tabletop RPG creator kind of servers that I'm a part of, and I'll often share artwork there before it goes live on Instagram or anywhere else, really. But yeah, that's about it, really. I'm not really crazy about social media or anything like that, so I'm not really on there too much. I mostly try to, I do the work that I have to, like on Instagram, for instance. I post 5 times a week, or rather once a day, Monday through Friday. And I use Twitter more as a platform for just like sharing random stuff, more so than the kind of career related stuff I'm doing on Instagram. And Reddit is mostly just a platform for me to share artwork or get clients, that sort of thing. I get a lot of my income through Reddit. I think that's just about where I'm active. I should be on Goodreads more because I love to read. All right, well, thank you for being on the show. Hey, no problem. Don't mention it. My pleasure. if you want me to be on every show, I totally will. Oh, that's a good idea. But anyway, here's some closing announcements. So the show is available on, I think, every streaming platform. iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, pretty much all of them. I went on Googled all the podcast platforms and made sure that I at least had my little RSS feed going there. So yeah, if you come across the show and would like to leave a rating, I would love it. It would help boost the show on the list of podcasts. It's really hard to find unless you search exactly for The Art of Adventure podcast, which is, not ideal, but hey, what are you going to do? And yeah, I guess that's about it. Thank you for listening. And alright, that's it. Bye-bye. If you'd like to follow the show on social media, check out theartofadventurecast.com. And if you'd like to see some of my artwork, check out macteg.com. This has been the Art of Adventure podcast. Thank you for listening.